Join me now to weigh in, representing Florida's 1st Congressional District, Congressman Matt Gaetz. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me. So, Congressman, I'll say that I feel inspired by the Canadian truckers. I appreciate that they are pushing back against the tyranny happening in Canada. And we've seen this worldwide. We've seen these massive protests of people pushing back against their governments, yet there's been almost like a blackout and a complete media silence on our behalf. They don't even want to highlight it or talk about it. And if they do, they try to slander those who are participating in these protests.
Well, big government, big media, and big business are working together all around the world to restrict freedom and push these mandates. And so we stand in solidarity with our brethren to the north, the true north, strong and free, they actually say in their Canadian national anthem. And I think this is a real important lesson to American politicians, because I think our truckers are probably even tougher and maybe a little meaner than the Canadian ones. So we ought to resist these mandates. And I think that there is a global populist movement that favors freedom, that pushes back against government restraints, that really is going to be unstoppable. And you see that with the persistence and with the determination of these Canadians. Who knows, Steph, maybe when they're done in Ottawa, we'll bring them down to the southern border and secure that while we're at it.
Yeah, I mean, we might as well. Why not? Now, I will say that we saw that the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, he went into hiding for safety concerns, and then all of a sudden he has COVID now, so he can't really address what's going on. But he did walk out of his cave to slander the truckers and those participating in the protest. We have video of it. Roll tape.
I have attended protests and rallies in the past. When I agreed with the goals, when I supported the people expressing their concerns and their issues. Black Lives Matter is an excellent example of that. But I have also chosen to not go anywhere near protests that have expressed hateful rhetoric, violence towards fellow citizens, and a disrespect not just of science, but of the frontline health workers and, quite frankly, the 90% of truckers who have been doing the right thing to keep Canadians safe, to put food on our tables. Canadians know where I stand. This is a moment for responsible leaders to think carefully about where they stand and who they stand with.
So we heard the Prime Minister talking about the hateful rhetoric and violence towards citizens, and that he, was supportive of the Black Lives Matter protests. But then when we have these protesters, they're protesting the wrong thing, according to him, so it's a problem.
Yeah, I believe that you don't just get to interact with the people who agree with you if you want to lead a country. COVID-19 or Coward-19, who can even tell anymore with Justin Trudeau? I certainly think that it's not a good look for the Prime Minister to be so tone-deaf when it comes to the feelings of his constituents. And while it's the truckers who are muscling up and having their voice heard now, what I think is really important is there's a sense of solidarity and support that permeates Canadian society, even American society, all of us who believe that we have a role to play in resisting these restrictions of freedom. So I think that this will probably be a pretty substantial ding to the Prime Minister. I'd be more afraid of those truckers than COVID-19, certainly the Omicron variant.
Yeah, and then according to reports, some 90% of the truckers are vaccinated. So it's not that they're anti-vaxxers, they're just, fighting for their freedom. And we've seen a lot of the reports, even in this country, where they're trying to, again, try to portray and paint this as something that it's not. And they keep focusing in on some random things. For example, apparently there was a Confederate flag. And so, again, they're trying to, lump everyone in this group with this person who was carrying a Confederate flag. But now there's video that surfaced of people who were there that saw something was up, they didn't like it, and then they told the guy with the Confederate flag to leave. But of course, everyone's trying to cover this up. They don't want to talk about it. We have the video. Roll tape.
Now he's going. Now he's gone. We called him out. He knows. He's going to hold his head in shame now.
So as you see, the majority of people there aren't embracing this person running around with a Confederate flag. I also find it rather curious. This person has their face completely covered while everyone else is not covering their face. Do you see anything odd going on here?
I'm just glad we finally found the guy who took the mask that I wore on the floor of the House of Representatives. Now, of course, Steph, this was a false flag. And increasingly, we're in an era of politics where the false flag is becoming a prominent tool used by the political left to confuse and divide and harm people. You'll remember in the Virginia governor's race, Democrat operatives dressed up like they were white supremacists wanting to harm people, and they used that to try to smear people who were otherwise involved in an uplifting and positive and ultimately successful campaign. And so wherever you see people coming together to fight for freedom, to express their patriotism, their love of country, to have redress of their grievances constitutionally platformed, you will see circumstances where the left tries to insert provokers or people who purport views that aren't necessarily the view of the group. But the reason that's important is that the mainstream media will obsess about that and focus on that and try to create divisions where they otherwise don't exist. What's exciting about our politics now is it's not just the red team against the blue team. You see Americans from all political persuasions coming together. You see Canadians, you see people all over the world. Look at the rallies and the protests and the marches happening in Europe. You see regular folks coming together to say that they want the power back that government has inappropriately seized. And, you know, there's just nothing more powerful than the populace of the country coming together and saying, no, we demand to have those God-given rights reflected in the way that our government treats us.
Exactly. And I wanted to get your reaction to this. We've been covering it a lot on this show, and I think it's important to highlight it every single time. All of those political leaders who come up with these mask mandates and all the COVID-19 mandates, they seem to not want to follow their own rules. And it turns out that Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, was caught again without his mask on, and then he tries to deny it. He was at the game there, and he's standing next to Magic Johnson. He's looking pretty happy, breathing in some fresh air there. And so his excuse was that that was just for a picture, but it turns out there's more pictures of him not wearing a mask. And it wasn't just him. There was the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, and also the mayor of San Francisco. They all caught maskless in the same suite there. Interesting.
It certainly is, and it's the hypocrisy that bothers people particularly subject to these mandates that aren't well rooted in science, but in government control. Now, as a Floridian, I actually think that everyone ought to be able to hang out with Magic Johnson without a mask on. I don't think that we ought to subject politicians to the torture just so that we can all enjoy it. In Florida, it's actually considered disrespectful to be wearing a mask when it otherwise wouldn't be necessary. And so I just think it's time to dispense with the silliness and the hypocrisy. And the politicians know that this is junk science. They know it's not to keep you safe, it's to keep you subdued. And they don't want to be subdued, so they don't follow the rules. And I think we should just get rid of the pretense and acknowledge that this really was not the way to go for the country. And with more freedom, with more expression, we can all be happier.
And then Gavin Newsom was asked about this during a press conference, and we have the video of it. Let's take a look. Roll tape.
Relates to, you're correct, I was very judicious yesterday, very judicious, and you'll see the photo that I did take where Magic was kind enough, generous enough to ask me for a photograph, and in my left hand's the mask, and I took a photo. The rest of the time I wore it, as we all should, not when I had a glass of water or a thing, and I encourage everybody else to do so.
It's fascinating how the virus works. So if you are just taking a picture and you're at the 49ers-Rams game, then the virus doesn't spread during that moment where you have your mask off, by the way. I mean, it's just so offensive.
Maybe Magic Johnson is just the ultimate virus curer, and if you're in his presence, you're virus-free.
Yeah.
I think that we should just get the last flight attendant I had to follow Gavin Newsom around everywhere he goes to say, "Oh, you're not sipping your water right now. Mask back on." I mean, we are all smart enough now to look at the science, to review the evidence, and to see how the policies of our government don't really lean into the experiences of Americans or even what the data tells us. It really is, I think, about politicians being able to live one way and being able to dictate terms to folks otherwise. Again, in Florida, we think this is also silly. Why did you all keep this governor? Why did you not get rid of him? You know, there are people like Ron DeSantis out there that actually believe in the freedom of their constituents. It's a heck of a thing. You guys should try it out there in the Golden State sometime, Steph.
Yeah, it's not my fault. I didn't vote for him. Anyway, Matt, we're going to leave it here. Thank you so much.